I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zach Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to our very special episode of Arcane Mark. We're going to go through all 152 of the monsters from Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. So I hope you're ready to join us for that. Linda is going to go through a blitz of these, so I'm going to ping our Discord to let them know about this. So to let you know how we're going to do it, we're going to go through the monsters, and we're going to say at least something about each one. Now, the monster's name may have changed due to pagination or a variety of other reasons. In fact, it could change again after this because of the fact that essentially, once you get to a platinum family, it kind of has to start on the left side of the page. So if there's an odd number of creatures in between two platinum families, which there will be statistically in some point, one or a few names are going to change again after this.
Yes,
so
but
keep that in mind.
most of these names are final.
More than half, by a significant amount.
Indeed.
One more thing. So it's very difficult to put, like, all 150, we don't even have all 152 pieces of art, but putting them all up on here, it takes a while. But we are intending to show a few pieces of art at the end. So when you hear about one of these creatures, or maybe it's your creature and you're watching this and you're here live, go ahead and vote for creatures you're interested in seeing. And maybe you can do it as we go along with the show in case you forget. There's a lot of them. And at the end, we'll take a look and we'll grab a few of them and show you what the art looks like on the show. It take a little while to do that, so be sure to get in your votes as we go along. So that's how this little game is going to work.
And as for the order that we're doing,
it's a mystery. You might be able to figure it out.
Yes.
But it's a very mysterious.
It was an order that was chosen by me. That is your hint.
It was chosen by Linda, based on our attempts to do some different orders. So, let's start with the first one, Zenarian.
All right. Zenarians are aeons. They are creatures of mathematical paradoxes, and they're all about cutting things in half, whether they're cutting your hit points in half, or whether they are surviving because you can't do more than cut their hit points in half at the same time.
Because it's Zeno's paradox. All right, what about Rippies, or Rippi? How is that pronounced?
I'm not sure.
What is cool
they didn't
about
come
it?
with pronunciation guides. Rippies are plant fae. They are pranksters who create duplicates of themselves, and
I'm guessing they're Rippi, kind of like Selkie.
Yeah, probably.
Or Nixie.
They create all sorts of copies. They're swapping places with the copies and having the copies that you actually attacked exploding. They are they're sneaky pranksters, but they probably won't kill you. They can do non-lethal damage whenever they want.
That sounds like they're using plants and like spatial manipulation, so they may even be a space wood combination. So for those of you joining in, these are Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm creatures, so they all have at least one element, up to 3 different elements on them. What about the Whittler's Serpent?
Whittler's Serpents are when bards are making instruments, and they and the wood chips get charged with occult magic, then and animate into elementals. Then they're basically like little serpents made up of wood shavings.
What's the cool thing they can do?
They
What's
are.
cool about it?
They can they feint with like their performances instead of deception, and they kind of like come in and they come in and bite. They have some inspiration that they can do to really target you effectively, even if you're trying to hide.
Neat. That is interesting.
And they also can mimic the sounds that they've heard.
Are they friends with like Lotus Neck?
I bet they would be.
They're both like wood elemental snakes.
And you gotta make sure you don't get too many of them close together. They might eat each other and turn into a giant one.
Nice. What about Well-Wishers?
Well-Wishers are really weird fae. They come from a merging of a trio of fortune fae. They can twist wishes of people who made wishes at the well.
Oh, so they're like fae who live in a wishing well.
Yeah, they live in a Well-Wisher. They live in a wishing well, and you can try to like roll flat checks with them to they have a lot of things that are like, oh, you can roll a DC 13 flat check to see if you can roll twice and take the better result. But if you fail, you roll twice and take the worse result. So there's a lot of things with them about like 3s and 13s and manipulating dice rolls.
That's very interesting. What about Weatherbanes?
Weatherbanes
It's not a weather vane, it's a weather bane.
Yes. So weatherbanes do look like weather veins because there what happens when an elemental gets trapped inside of a weather vein is very
is that
angry
on
about
purpose that you build one with an elemental to like power it, or does it accidentally
it's usually
shocks
an
the vein
accident
and
that
then
the
it gets
shot
stuck
comes
in there?
and then it gets stuck, and they're very angry. This creature has a 0-foot speed and cannot move, and like everything you try to do to move it doesn't move it.
Then how does it manage to be a level 3 challenge for your PCs
Well,
if it can't be moved?
It has some pretty high range with its electric attacks and its wind blasts, and it can try to blow you back to keep you at range when you come in toward it.
But if you can get out of its range, or at least in a place where its range is at a disadvantage, then you might be able to take it down, right? Because it looks like its range increment on its highest thing is 100 feet. So if you're getting killed by a weatherbane, you're going to want to back up, see if there's something you can do at like 300 and some feet where it's taking a -6 on that 100-foot range increment.
Yeah.
See if you can take it down. So what about a Wagabago?
Wagabagos are really creepy creatures there are Sakils that are associated with the fear of change. They create different illusions to try to encapture people, whether it's bringing up trauma, bringing up fear of persecution, or tempting them with promises of a better future. They do this. They can do this to cause the mask to kind of fly off and make illusory creatures that can also then attack and do different things. They slip between the ethereal plane and the universe, and they do a lot of mental damage and spirit damage with the stuff that they do. They basically kind of project their bodies through cracks in reality to terrorize people.
And what about the Vitatella?
So Vitatella are incorporeal spirits of nature. So they're not like incorporeal undead, which is pretty cool.
Are they made of what, pollen?
They can so they're incorporeal, but they like create clouds of pollen.
Got it. Because I guess if you were made of pollen, you would still be corporeal. You would just be like kind of a gaseous
get there.
form.
There's a creature that's made of pollen later on. Yeah, but they create like clouds of pollen that can create like clots in people's lungs. They have an aura of growth that just makes difficult terrain and plants all around them, and they leave trails of foliage in their wake.
Nice.
So you can predict like where they're very easy to track, shall we say?
Well, yeah, I think it would be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
What about the Vigil Flame?
Vigil flames are little tiny psychopomps that are kind of like the lantern that guides the dead to the afterlife. They have a particular hatred for another creature later in this book that is a lantern-based undead.
Oh man! So it's a lantern psychopomp and a lantern undead, and they hate each other.
They hate each other so much. So like a lot of psychopomps, they have like a lot of light powers, like holy light and revealing light, and they can try to stoke their flames to bolster their allies while burning their foes.
Oh, now that's kind of cool. What about Vengeful Crab Bowl?
This one is hilarious. So this is literally an animated bowl of crab rice and egg soup that comes from a unfortunate arcane cooking experiment. It's gonna throw eggs at you that goop you up and deal fire splash damage. It's gonna throw steaming globs of rice that create hot steam. It can basically rage itself by boiling over, taking a penalty.
I remember this one. This is
more fire
this
damage.
is one of the ones that I looked at too.
Yeah.
I think isn't it weak to being like eaten with your jaw attacks and weak to being spilled with the bowl?
Yes, it's weak to bite and weak to being spilled over. Yeah. So it basically kind of moves around like on a tide of soup.
That's hilarious. That is very funny. What about the treacherous telekinetic
hand? One of the ones that had to get renamed because of the remastered.
The Vengeful Crab Bowl also had its name somewhat changed, but this one was because it used to be a mage hand.
Yes, exactly.
It was like a mutinous mage hand or something.
So basically, So basically, the idea is that if you're a caster and you overuse telekinetic hand, the spell might eventually develop sentience and resent you, and then come in and like try to choke you. It has an ability that it can always find its creator, even though it's like really low level. It's very good at finding its creator. It can, even though it's a tiny hand, it can strangle you if you're up to size medium.
It's like,
yeah, and try to squeeze your throat, mess with your spell casting, which is not great if you're a spellcaster. It can also like create phantom pain and just it's kind of a mess if you have one of those coming after you. And they tend to become petty tyrants in their own right, and if they then learn how to cast Mage Hand, they might.
Could they create another telekinetic hand that tries to choke the hand?
That's correct.
How do you choke a hand? Is it like this?
They have heads on the back of their hands.
Fair enough.
At least in the original art.
What about Thananicti?
So Thananicti are fae that pretend to be psychopomps. They are, and so they come along and they're like, yes, deal with your undead problem, and so they become venerated as divine beings and bringers of repose. But they
just want to eat the souls.
They're actually trapping and eating the souls and the wing. And
I remember this one from the other episode.
So they have sorrowful melodies that like stupefy and drain people. They can eat the souls of people. It's very hard to get through their disguise as well.
That's appropriate for a level 19 creature.
Yeah, so like because it's very hard to figure out they're unholy, to figure out they're fae. Like they're really come across as psychopomps in pretty much every way, and they're really dangerous.
What about Tempestuans?
Speaking of Tempestuans, they are aeons of the contradictory elements in nature that create weather and define seasons, who are dedicated to maintaining the weather systems of entire worlds. They are surrounded they're always in the eye of a storm, so they're surrounded by an aura of winds that messes up ranged attacks and repels creatures and things like that.
But would that mean that there's like a calm, still air in the eye of the storm?
Correct.
And then just beyond that, it's horrible?
The air within 20 feet of them is still, and then between 20 and 25 feet away, it's hurricane force winds. So, like, trying to attack them from a distance is not going to work.
So this is one of the few types of creatures where you actually want to be close to them and inside of their inner aura because it's actually safer there.
Yes, it's
Although
safer.
then probably you'll get killed by the
their things.
Tempestuan.
Yeah, I mean, they're 17th level creatures, so they've got, like, Wrathful Storm and Falling Stars and things like that. They can control weather just whenever they want to in an hour without a secondary caster, and they can unleash storms to... They can also, like, push you... They also have an unleashing storm that, like, deals damage and then pushes you away, so then forces you through their hurricane force winds to the other side, and then you have to deal with that again.
It would probably be worse if they couldn't control weather, given what their role is. That's pretty cool. So what's the deal with a Tambogami?
Tambogami are kami that are guardians of rice fields. They work with farmers to bring about bountiful harvests. They have, they also have some controlling water type things. And water-based stuff. They can do a holy rain spray that is like, that it does like both bludgeoning damage and spirit damage. It's more damaging against unholy creatures because they're essentially like holy water creatures. They can their ward is rice fields. They see through the rain. And they can fly up in the air and then do a holy raindrop dive.
Nice. Stormadillo.
So stormadillos are really wild creatures. They're kind of like armadillos, but static armadillos. They
like
curl
static
up and roll.
electricity, or static because they just stay where they are.
No, static electricity. But they can like electrify the ground and then statically cling to roll along it.
Huh. Would that allow them to roll on ceilings because they're
so they can roll on ceilings and they can move really fast when they're doing that, and they can also like trample you, and it does more if they're doing their cling. So,
oh man, does it do extra electric damage?
It does extra electric damage, yeah. So you're basically, they're going to be electrifying surfaces and then rolling along them.
So it's like Sonic the Hedgehog, but with lightning powers.
Yeah, basically.
And it's an armadillo, not a hedgehog. What about Starborn? I remember we
talked about
them
these
before.
In the last episode, yeah. So Starborn are level 20, but their perception to sense motive is 20 lower than their normal perception. Because they are sort of well-intentioned, kind forces of nature that are incredibly easily manipulated and therefore can become, like, terrors of destruction.
So there's a DC 22 to lie to them with deception, which means your first-level character might have some trouble doing it who's specialized in lying, but there is a decent chance you could successfully lie to this level 20 like Star Child and convince it of whatever you want.
Yeah. So one thing they have a lot of like gravity based powers, like a gravity well reaction. If you were a creature that's like anywhere remotely close to them and you try to attack them, then they get to choose the target destination, other effects of what you were doing, as if they were the caster or attacker.
What? That's ridiculously powerful. It makes sense that they're a level 20
creature. They're level 20 creatures,
like,
so that's their reaction. Just like, nope.
I mean, you get a save, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think that...
They can also, like, enforce gravity in an area. They just, like, create a gravity cube, and they try to, like, counteract everything that would let you fly or otherwise avoid falling. And then it's like, gravity is this way, now go fall.
That gravity well is so nasty. You need to wait for them to use it, and then put up, like, a laughter spell on them so that they lose their reactions, because I do not want my things to target my allies.
Yeah.
My things are unfair and powerful. They shouldn't target my allies. They should target the starboard. Or maybe not, because it's not, like, that evil.
It's not that evil, but as we mentioned before, the Spirit Flame Lantern is a symphony of spirits that are bound inside of a silver lantern.
Is this the evil one that is hated by the Psychopomp Lantern?
Psychopomp one, yeah. So
awesome.
they burst out, so they burst out with, like, the grasping hands of the imprisoned spirits. They can burn you. They are like they're kind of they're incorporeal and they're floating around. They deal like fire and void damage when they're doing that. And they also their beam of spirit flame can spook you.
Ah, that's cool. Maybe you should go get help from the Vigil Flame.
You probably should.
All right, so Spectral Conductor
is one of a pair of incorporeal undead conductor ghosts. This one is
the friendlier
one. They can they quicken the tempo of folks around them, or they can reduce the tempo of others around them as well. But whatever they do, they're affected by it. So, like, if they do the slowing aura, they are slowed, and if they do the quickening aura, they are quickened. They have like they do a thing that causes like everyone to have to succeed at a will save, or they have to use performance for their initiative.
So they want to bring everyone into the band.
Everyone should perform.
Everyone can perform. They want to make you better, and you all join their concert. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they bring monsters into their concert, and they'll protect their people. Whereas the other conductor is the ghost of a conductor who, rather than loving music and wanting everyone in there, is a perfectionist and hates it when you mess up. We'll get to the storm conductor soon, because it's even... going to, or it's not called the storm conductor.
That's the special conductor. We'll get to that.
We'll get to the other one soon.
So speaking of dangerous soul-based creatures, the Soul Collector is a creature that is trapped in its own demiplane, but the bridge between its demiplane and reality is some kind of a magical soul decanter, and it draws all creatures nearby into the prison demiplane. It can it has like a longer reach of dominate and suggestion and things like that. It can create undead using souls trapped within its prison, and then use them like as it scouts out into the world. And it also has some powerful occult magic on top of it.
If I remember correctly, if one of your allies gets drawn in there, you may need to voluntarily go into its prison to help them fight.
To get them out, because it can release souls if it wants to, with the imbuing soul as an undead, but otherwise it takes like wish or the direct intervention of a deity to get them out if you're not killing the creature. So you kind of have to go in and go after it.
Yikes. What about Skyhearts?
Skyhearts are creatures that are made from the dreams of people who wanted to fly. So whether they were pursuing the dream of like making airships and they didn't succeed, or whether it's like an ancient lost civilization that once had airships but has gone into decline, they believe they can fly, and by which I mean they don't have a natural flight, but they can like dive themselves off of cliffs and then roll a fairly easy will save to get as a reaction to like seize flight and believe they can fly into being able to fly. They spit out fuel. They can do like a sharp inhale to draw people in. They can recklessly launch themselves off and basically do a jet cannon type thing, or they can swallow you into their large bodies.
And they're weak to falling damage.
Yes,
so if you do manage to make them fail their save, or you stop them from using their reaction, they take a bunch of damage.
Yes, they have weakness 25 to falling damage.
That's a lot.
It's just absurd amount of weakness.
Well, I mean, it's a very high level creature, but I guess not that high. What about siren spiders? Is that like a spider that plays music?
Yeah, they are predators with haunting melodies. Their carapaces resonate with sound that auditory effects that are near them, causing them to emanate out 15 feet away from the spider.
So it's like a web of music instead of a physical web.
Yeah, it's basically like a web of music they can grab into with your fangs. They can do the web tether thing that a lot of spiders can do, and they can drain out your vital essence or fascinate you or paralyze you. They're just kind of a mess if you're fighting against them.
So what's the deal with the Shadow Thief? Does it steal your shadows?
Yeah, so the Shadow Thief they're undead that come from assassins and other nefarious individuals who engage in violent activities under cover of darkness. They make bargains with creatures to agree to give away their shadows in exchange for a payment or service. Creatures who have done this kind of have an unsettling presence, and they're like, you might be mistaken for a vampire or something because they don't have a shadow. They can do like a lashing kick to try to stomp on people's shadows. They can when they're like destroyed, they instead appear inside the shadow of the nearest creature that is currently cursed by a shadow bargain, and like kind of put that shadow back, and then they're like, yes, now I am reborn. So they're like really difficult to get rid of.
What about the Sepsis Serpent?
Sepsis serpents are oozes that kind of take on a serpentine form. They bite creatures and inject their venom, which then causes creatures to
grow ooze
like
snakes
this disease ooze and develop ooze snakes inside of them, and then have their blood coagulate into a new sepsis serpent. So they're one of those like
nice.
They're one of those continually multiplying problems that you can have in a settlement.
All right, what about Rotwood? I think I wrote a story about these guys.
Yeah, so Rotwood is like what happens when a druid or other primal magic user is like, I'm going to awaken this tree, but the tree was like super infested with a terrible infection, and they're racked with pain and fury, and then they just kind of go on a rampage. So they have a withering touch that channels corruption into creatures, enfeebling them and dealing void damage. They can throw rocks. They can spew out great swarms of mosquitoes. They can cause, if you attack them, they can explode out in a burst of fungal infection that can blind you. And they also have like a rotten aura that deals just void damage around them.
What about the Rictus mask? Is it just like a mask?
They are tiny monitors. They are left behind by psychopomps to say, pry no further into this area.
Are they themselves psychopomps, or are they like allies of psychopomps?
They're allies of psychopomps, but they're not technically psychopomps. They accelerate time, dealing force damage around them. They can create echoes of the damned to create like medium statues that are facsimiles of creatures that they've previously harmed, and then they can like try to puppet those around and cause the statues to like take damage instead of them and then explode.
They love Macbeth.
Yes, they love Macbeth. There's a lot of Macbeth references in their abilities for sure.
What about the Refulgent Prismite?
Refulgent Prismites are creatures that they generate light. They can only detect light that came from what they generated, which is really weird because then they have radiant resonance as a precise sense. It's like, it's sight, but it's only for the light that they specifically generated.
So like they can't see from the sun.
Correct.
Or a torch that you're carrying.
Yes,
they can only see from their
fact
own
that they
light.
have an aura of light on them. Yeah.
So if you're beyond their aura of light with a torch, they wouldn't see, hey, there's a torch in the distance.
Correct.
Interesting.
Their radiant, they have their radiant gleam is a 60-foot.
So they just can't see anything outside of 60, or no, they can see anything that is lit by the light that is in their 60 feet, which could go beyond that. But they can't see anything.
Yeah, it typically allows them to see in the area of their aura, but it can be extended by their other abilities.
That's what it is.
So, like, that's how they start. So they can refract. If there's multiple of them around, then they can refract light from each other, which increases the radius of their bright light. So they help each other out with seeing in that regard. They have a brilliant, as you might expect, they have a brilliance attack that sheds bright light that is blinding or dazzling and deals lots of damage. And they can also earth glide.
So you want to keep out of their light. That's safer for you. What about the Quantum Hummer?
So the Quantum Hummer is a bird that enters into quantum superposition to become essentially a swarm of potential probabilities. When they distort their position, they become a swarm. But they are generally considered to be, in a lot of cases, they're kind of like their real location is not known. But if you manage to critically succeed in a perception check to seek them or negate invisibility, then you notice their location,
which collapses
the waveform into a single location. And then that causes them to have issues because they can no longer use their swarm stuff.
Lorelei mentioned in chat, there's lantern, undead, lantern, psychopomp, lantern, archon, lantern, fish.
Yeah,
there's lots
there you
of
go.
different kinds of lanterns.
Everybody has lanterns.
All right, so that's the quantum hummer. That's really cool.
That they sing. So Prune Future.
What about Prune Future?
Is a creature that comes when the life of a hero or villain or someone else with a great destiny is cut short under extraordinary circumstances. And it's an echo of the lost potential future that manifests on the astral plane. They can borrow future at the start of their turn to gain temporary hit points. They have a vulnerability to fortune and misfortune type effects. They can inflict with their pruning shears that they use to prune others' futures. They can use a curse of unraveled fate to dazzle and doom people and cause them to have to take the worst, basically have a misfortune effect on them. Roll twice, take the worst. They can use discern stratagem to peer into the future of a creature to prepare a killing blow as well. And they're whenever they have a fortune effect on them, their strikes all become fatal D12, which is nasty.
But they can also split. They're also weak.
They're weak to misfortune.
Misfortune, but not fortune.
Yeah, I believe so.
It'd be interesting if they got damaged, but then
they're weak to misfortune. I'm pretty sure.
What about the Postgeist?
One other thing about them is that they split their future into two different timelines and then decide which one is the true one when they attack.
Alright, so what about
Postgeists are going to deliver the mail, the rain, sleet, snow, and everything else that might possibly exist. They know where you live. If you're carrying a letter with the written name of a location, they know the fastest way to that location. If they carry a letter with the name of a creature that the writer was familiar with, they know where that creature is.
I remember I was saying you could list the BBEG's name and give it to a Postgeist and then try to follow them there.
Yes. It doesn't tell you where they are right now. It tells you where they were when they last made their daily preparations. So you could get around it if you knew what was going on, but they're really kind of be like horror movie monsters at some point. It's like, I'm gonna deliver you the message.
It's like they're stalking you throughout the horror movie, and then at the end you're in you're in a dead end and the ghost comes up to you and you think it's gonna kill you, and it's like, a letter for you.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those horror comedy where at the end you realize it wasn't trying to kill you. It just was trying to bring you
but
your
if
mail.
the letter is some kind of cursed message or whatever.
I think it could be. It could just be regular mail.
It could just be regular mail. Anyway, they have a return to sender thing where if you target them with an auditory or linguistic effect and they successfully counteract it, they can send it back to you when they strike you with their letters.
Turn it into a letter and send it back.
Return to sender. Boom.
What about Pollen Brawler?
So Pollen Brawler is the creature that's literally pollen. It's pollen kind of into a humanoid form composed of millions of particles of pollen. They tend to wrap themselves around trees or conceal themselves in large bushes and then come out. Their poison is fittingly a hay fever. That's just what's going to happen if you're attacked by a giant pollen. They can fly if the winds are very mild or still. But if there's stronger winds, then they can have trouble maintaining their coherence.
That makes sense. What about the Plisayasha?
Plisayasha are little creatures that swim. They swim through the sky, and they launch themselves into the sky. They have a frigid breath that deals cold damage and pushes people back, but they also can spit out thermic compound that does persistent fire damage. They're really bizarre in the way that they interact with the cold and fire elements, which is cool. When they have resistance to fire, but if they still manage to take fire damage, they lose their fire resistance and take persistent fire damage.
Is it because they're trying to regulate their temperature so if it goes beyond it causes an issue?
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting. So you want to know exactly what you can do in order to mess them up.
Yeah, and sometimes they get hunted because they're not tasty, but the fish that are cooked in their unique stomach are a delicacy.
What about plasma lashers?
They kind of look like a massive lightning spider where limbs of plasma... There's a chunk of suspended metal and they've got like all these limbs of plasma coming out. Other creatures can occupy the same space as them because they're basically just like this tiny orb and other things, but the air in that space is not safe to breathe and deals like poison damage and electricity damage. And
I'm pretty sure I wrote a story about this, and the iconic Vestige Hunter went into that area to attack the metal thing, and he got wrecked by all these.
It also makes you shocked, which is a condition you might know from other Battlezoo products. They're you have to basically like. You want to attack their metallic core because they have a lot of physical resistance, but their core is harder to hit, but it doesn't have that resistance. Instead, it has a weakness to bludgeoning damage. So they're basically going to do a lot of pulsing currents and electricity damage, and they can create they create like a conductive connection between their core and another creature, and create like giant line zaps.
That makes sense. What about Pilatatri?
Pilatatris are gremlins that are specifically oriented around messing up farming communities. They poison food and drink. They corrupt the products of livestock, and they create like this general like sickening toxin. They disguise themselves as like, you know, ordinary folk, and they tend to go around. They like ruining festivals and other like celebrations and events by spoiling the food and just generally causing people to have a bad time.
It looks like they can give you this sort of corrupted food and it won't do anything at first, and then as a 2-action activity, they just suddenly cause everybody who ate the corrupted food to get the poison all at once.
Yeah, and then it becomes against the virulent trait from that.
So that way you won't notice until everybody's eaten it.
Yeah, so they basically do that, and then they like they corrupt all those things, they camp a feast, and then they like make everyone get sick at the same time. And then they think it's hilarious.
What about Phasmogorgia?
Phasmogorgia are like a spirit fungus. They can sense the spirits of creatures nearby. That's how they see instead of vision. They have like a haze of ectoplasmic ambrosia that causes creatures to be doomed and fascinated by it. They try to latch ethereal hooks into the souls of nearby creatures to pull them toward it. And then like stun them. They have a swarm of this trapped spirits that surges out around them, and they can digest these captive spirits to renew their bodies.
With their Phantasmorgaspore.
With their Phantasmorgaspore, yes.
What's Paradoxical Past? Is that a friend? That's a friend of the future, right? The pruned future?
Yeah. Paradoxical Pasts are creatures that are just completely... caused by like paradoxes in time travel, and they wind up getting stuck just doing the same thing over and over again, and they are going to try to make you curse you to have to do the same thing over and over again. So like you have to spend the last section of your next turn repeating something you already did that turn, like striding, striking, or casting a spell, but not necessarily in the same direction or the same target. But if you can't repeat it, then you lose the action. So they're going to try to force you with even with just their basic strike is going to constantly be cursing people like that. And they can gain extra benefits if they basically repeat their past turn in that way. Then they can roll twice and take the higher and everything.
That makes sense. What about the Uvalist?
Uvalist are sort of a fae of beguiling people and also poison. They have these blood gems that they're always juggling and are like sliding in and out of wounds on their hands. They basically are going to try to get people to be caught up in pleasant hallucinations and fantasies and lose track and forget. They promise to people that they can forget their traumatic memories and find new peace by following these fae.
It looks like they dazzle you and then do bonus damage to people who are
dazzled. They dazzle you and do bonus damage to people. They can they cause hallucinations. They're pretty dangerous.
Cool. What about Nimbus Dirge?
Nimbus Dirges are undead giants. They are created from, they're necromantically created from cloud giants. They are, and basically they were considered to be a failure by the necromancers, and they were just kind of turned loose. They remember what it meant to be able to make beautiful music. So they can actually be demoralized by performance instead of intimidation. They're surrounded by an aura of harsh winds. They can create, they don't create beautiful music anymore. They create cacophonous fury, dealing extra sonic damage to anyone who's frightened, and then they do like a big aura of harmonic discord that frightens folks and deals a lot of sonic damage. So they're sonic damage and fear.
Nice.
Is their theme there.
What about the Nightmare Shade?
The Nightmare Shade.
Nightmare Shade.
They are, as you might expect, a shadowy creature. They terrorize people. They're basically like the creatures of night terrors, right? They come back to people over and over again to terrorize them. They create like black smoke that frightens people and douses light sources. They can hit unconscious creatures to try to like slow or paralyze them. They're just basically nightmares and night terrors given form.
Mm-hmm. So there are people who've been asking about things like why were there birds doing quantum superposition? It's one of the creatures. It's a quantum hummer. There's some other questions in chat about the gremlins who are doing food poisoning.
Literal party poopers, yep, for sure.
Yep. And Postgeist, who is we're just trying to reach you about renewing your home warranty.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh boy.
And they also gain temporary hit points, the Nightmare Shades, from eating your fear, and they can sense fear too.
All right, what about Neoctree?
Neoctree are creatures of rapid, almost instantaneous evolution. They start with 4 legs, but they can then evolve dynamically into either their bipedal form or their tripedal form. Their tripedal form has like a lot of speed and senses, whereas their bipedal form is larger and more damaging. It gains reactive strikes. So
and the quadrupedal is more defensive?
The quadrupedal is how they start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then either of those forms gains like buffs based on what they need.
Makes sense.
I believe they initially had their quadrupedal form had like other things, but then that became
looks like it has an adaptive resistance thing, and then later it gets like
adaptive resistance where it changes its resistance to.
And later it gets like a reactive strike in the bipedal form. Although I guess it doesn't lose adaptive resistance, but it's less likely to use adaptive resistance.
I think it initially had like a thing where the quadrupedal form had more other stuff, but then that was getting a little complicated to say like remove this and that kind of thing. So I changed it.
What about the Nebulite?
The Nebulite are created by the collective consciousnesses of all life that is lost in a supernova. They have a planetary lore that draws upon the combined knowledge of everything and can be used to recall knowledge about everything. They speak every language that was spoken by at least one person caught in the supernova. They're surrounded by an accretion disk that makes it very hard to move away from them. To try to escape that pull, you don't use athletics, you use arcana or astronomy lore to make calculations about your trajectory. They have an event horizon. When you're within their event horizon aura, you can't communicate between the creatures within the aura and outside of the aura, except for magical means and telepathy and things like that. If you're within the aura, you are quickened. You can't use that action to move farther away from them, but you can use it to stride or strike otherwise. They have, as you might expect, like a gravitational pull on their attacks. They can also use fusion to force a creature to move, and if the path is blocked by another creature, then the creatures both glow and there's like a violent explosion.
What about mortarfish?
Mortarfish are fish that live in volcanoes. They can see clearly through the smoke and swim through the magma. They will grab you in their mouth, and then they will shoot off a geyser of magma, and you will be sailing along with them and splatting into your allies. When you do that, they can also create waves of magma too.
Nice. What about Moonlight Owl?
Moonlight Owls are very arrogant owls. They can use their encyclopedic lore to recall knowledge on any topic. They can send visions of that which should not be known into people's minds to frighten them. They can foresee your attacks or spells to make you roll twice and take the lower, or roll twice and take the higher on their saves. They have a lot of like cold-based stuff too, like frost armor.
Nice.
And they can impart their knowledge on you in the rapid pace.
What about the Metallic Phase Elemental?
Metallic Phase Elementals, These ones I think were originally called phase elementals, but I renamed them metallic phase because I just really liked the idea, and I thought, well, you could have phase elementals with different elements too. Anyway, they change their state of matter. They can be in a gas form where they can use shard blasts and metal storms and fly. They can be in a liquid form where they can use liquid lash and a wild splash and swim. And they can be in a solid form where they can use their metal strike and they can like burrow and gain tremor sense. So they change their mobility form as well as they have each of their forms has its own melee strike, and a lot of them have like other powers that they can activate too.
Nice.
Based on their element.
What about Matsugami?
Matsugami are ocean kami that protect shorelines and shoreline settlements. They are generally fascinated by the cultures of coastal communities. They can create disorienting whirlpools where they hit you and then like swirl you around and make you off guard, and you just like keep getting trapped in the whirlpool. They can do flying kicks. They can suplex you. They can Titan wrestle, so they can wrestle anybody. They have a torrential flurry where they're like doing kind of a flurry of blows type stuff as well. So they're like very like martial arts like
they're very high level and they're like human size roughly, it looks like.
Yes.
But they can wrestle anything.
They can wrestle creatures up to 3 sizes larger than so they can wrestle anything despite being human size.
What about liquefied?
Liquefied are results of experiments that try to create new types of elementals by fusing fusing kind of water and elementals together with other stuff. They're like in a puddle form as an immobile puddle, and they can temporarily solidify through applied pressure. So if you step on them, for example, then they become temporarily solidified, and then they can kind of use their own momentum.
Is it like an Einstein-Bose condensate?
Yeah.
Of some kind? Interesting.
So if you like they can try to pull you into their body. They have an interesting thing where their dramatic reaction to sudden impacts is lessened when the thing that's attacking them is slow. So like if you are slowed while attacking them, then you can actually harm them more and like destabilize their body and stuff like that.
Because it's messing around with what's keeping them cohered?
Yeah. Because your attack was slow, so it wasn't very effective in. Yeah.
So that's liquefied. What about lingering regrets? I think I have an idea just from that name.
Yeah, they're bundles of strong negative emotions that become ensnared in a time stream. They can flare up their negative emotions as they slice into creatures, dealing mental and slashing damage, and leaving broken shards of time littered in the space that can mess people up and sicken them from the rush of ongoing emotions that comes out of the shards. They can slow people by catching them in memories of their regrets. They can, when they're susceptible to future. So if they are quickened, instead of gaining any benefits, their body is just congeals and they lose. They have resistance to all damage, like usual for incorporeal. But if you manage to stick quicken on them, then they lose it.
That's funny. So they'd be weak against that conductor who can give everybody quickened. They're like, no, my regrets. Mm-hmm. What about lightlings?
Lightlings are little fire spirits that have the goal of tending to torches and lanterns and guiding lights in the dark places of the world. They take a lot of damage when they are like fail against darkness and shadow effects, or like if they're in areas of darkness. As you might imagine, they're generally carrying their lantern around at all times. They can use their lantern like a shield as well. And they can focus the beam of their lantern to deal fire damage.
Nice. What about the Life Spark Bandits?
Life Spark Bandits are like adorable little fire raccoons. They dig their claws into creatures to try to steal their life essence with thievery checks to become invigorated. They can take pieces of burning vital essence and be like, here you go, and try to force it onto creatures to deal them persistent damage and make it easier to damage that creature in the future. And they can create like arcs of fire and things like that.
Neat. What about Lethodamon, Amnesia Daemon?
Lethodamons, Amnesia Daemons, they represent creeping death of the self through memory loss. They have mists of the Styx that clouds the mind of nearby creatures and exposes them to drained memory, which stupefies, and you can keep being more and more stupefied up to stupefied 4 from this. They also drain memory on their spectral claws. They have range attack as a mental and spirit attack to stall thoughts. They also have spells like Warp Mind, Nevermind, Paranoia, Rewrite Memory, that kind of stuff.
Aha. What about Cabras, the intoxication demon?
Yes, these are bloated, bubbling demons born from souls whose sins arose from intoxication and debauched revelry. They challenge people to a drinking contest, and then they have to succeed at a will save to avoid drinking this liquid from their magically conjured flagons, which is a sickening poison.
Does anything happen if you beat them at the drinking contest, which you probably won't because they're a drinking demon?
I don't think so. I might have forgotten.
It looks like it doesn't, but
yeah.
You get bragging rights.
You get bragging rights, yeah. Their reaction is expunged. If a creature within 30 feet fails the saving throw to reduce its sickened condition, that they can force them to vomit, which reduces the sickened condition automatically, but causes a cone of acid and spirit damage.
Kojo said everyone in Toronto panicked about the fire raccoons.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Invulnerabug?
So, Invulnerabug has a reaction is just won't die, which is, if it would be reduced to 0 hit points or otherwise destroyed, it casts indestructibility as a reaction, if it hasn't already cast indestructibility. It burrows into your flesh to deal persistent bleed damage and make you off guard. It's tiny. It's a tiny level 16 creature, okay? What the heck? It can burrow through any physical substance with 20 or fewer hardness. And its maw is made up of magically enhanced adamantine, and that's why I can do it. It spits acid. If it's prone, then it loses the resistance. It can spend 1 action to gain immunity to a type of damage. And then just be like, yep, I'm just immune to bludgeoning because you keep attacking with these annoying bludgeoning attacks. And then it changes things.
It looks like it resists all damage, but when it's prone, it loses its resistance to all damage, but only to physical damage. So you can beat it up physically when it's prone.
Correct.
All right,
but not its immunity.
Not its immunity. What about interstitial sludge?
Interstitial sludge is like drippings that seep out of the spaces between planes of existence. They are so dark they almost appear two-dimensional. They enjoy the stability of reality, essentially, and resent all creatures who normally get to enjoy that. They can disrupt any kind of teleportation effects that you try to use, causing them to decide or causing you to go to random places. They're weak to light. They can retreat into the in-between to shunt themselves back into the spaces between reality and confuse everyone instead of being killed. They have greater constrict. They can gather, so their speed is 0 feet, but they have their ability instead of spatial hop. They gather their body into a 15-foot square that includes at least one of their initial squares, then pick a space within 10 feet of that 15-foot square to move into, and then finally redistribute their body into 9 contiguous squares.
So they pivot like this?
So they're stretch.
They stretch hop, to the end and then
pivot themselves. Yeah, so they can actually go pretty far with that.
Interesting.
And just choose how they want to be.
They warp themselves in space in order to move.
Yes.
That's pretty unique.
Yes.
What about the hollow crate swarm? That's Krait, crate like the snake, not like a crate swarm of
yes. Not like boxes, yeah.
Solid snake inside of his boxes.
So these are parasitic Dreamland's nightmare creatures. When they gather all together into a swarm, they can cause visions of death and waves of despair. They can leech into people's psyche frightened and stupefied creatures. They can use the abyss gazes back to frighten creatures whenever if you try to use a mental effect against them, it's like, no, you do not use mental against me. They have a frightful presence, but they have a courage vulnerability. They're repulsed by shows of bravery. If you're like, courageous anthem, they're like, ugh.
That's funny. What about Hemidae Queen?
So the Hemidae are essentially kind of wasp-like metally beasts that reproduce by infecting people with a disease called ferrodermia, which causes the outside of their body to turn into a metallic casing while the inside of their body liquefies and then transforms into a new Hemidae. So their goal is to spread Ferrodermia. By the time that a Himidae becomes a queen, the Himidae queen is made from an agglomeration of the lower ranking Himidae, the Overseers, and their body couldn't move on its own because it's so big. So they're put into, the Overseers build them into a giant machine. So they're moving around in like basically this war turret that has cannons.
So they're basically almost like a giant mecha, or even like the Power Rangers. If the Power Rangers had body horror, more like melded their bodies together, and they were stuck inside of the Megazord.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
If you try to concentrate near them, they can not only like zap you and distract your thing, but take control of your muscles to force you to move, which doesn't disrupt the action, but could take you out of the range of what you were trying to do. Or put you into an annoying place. They release mental pulses that do huge amounts of damage to non-Himidae, while letting Himidae creatures use a reaction to fly, step, or stride, and one of them can strike.
Mm-hmm. And they can shoot the cannons from their Megazords.
And they can shoot the cannon from their Megazords, which are like, there's acid cannon, fire damage, bludgeoning cannon, piercing cannon, and they have weakness to, if you get them cold like all the other Himidae, then they get weaker.
So let's do more Himidae. What about these Overseers that you said could combine to form Voltron?
So they can, they have clockwork. They're inventors. They have clockwork grenades. They have experimental defenses that they can try to put in the way of an attack, which then explode and deal damage if the attack hits. Basically, they force the attack to cry their crafting DC instead of their AC. But if it still hits, then so you take some damage, but then they can't do that anymore. They clamp onto prey by making like a lot of attacks against creatures, and they can try to weld creatures to the ground to restrain them and deal ongoing fire damage.
So what about the basic Himidae drones?
The basic guys can still weld like that, but they can't like attack as many things. All Himidae inflict Ferrodermia with their attacks to try to turn you into Himidae, but they also have a revolting excretion where they basically vomit out digestive fluids and deal acid damage and sicken you.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
They're like kind of the ones who go out into the wild and perform a lot of the tasks, whereas the other ones you're more likely to find in the hive itself.
It looks like their cold vulnerability also, they're weaker than the others. It causes their metal platings, which aren't as complete, to like retract and exposes points that gives them piercing weakness.
All of them have cold contractions.
Oh, they all have that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah, because it says as this, but more weakness. Yeah,
that's true of all of them.
Like the cold, because it causes the metal to shrink and exposes plates, and then you can...
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is what happens when you make metal chill down. What about level 20 Harrowphage?
Harrowphages are undead that represent areas that have been devastated by biological or chemical warfare.
Oh, right. These are the guys who have like 3 different diseases depending on what they do.
So they absorb the souls of creatures that die from poison damage nearby and heal from that. And then until the Harrowphage is destroyed, they counteract all attacks, things that would try to resurrect that creature. They have an aura that exposes people to the disease Noxicur, which is like an enfeebling and slowing disease that causes coughing and burning vision and then kills you. They have a bone-crunching claw that deals slashing damage and poison damage and exposes you to osteophage, which eats your way at your bones and slows you down by giving you a penalty to speeds. They have a plague bomb that does poison damage, and red haze, which is a disease that's mostly focused on taking massive amounts of poison damage and then eventually taking a penalty to saves against disease. Biobombardment does poison damage and then forces, if you critically fail, will advance the stage of all the diseases you have by 1.
Yikes.
So they're basically just poison and disease and all sorts of utter nonsense. Rico says Mark watched a very different version of Power Rangers than I did.
There you go. What about the giant gloom rat?
Giant gloom rats are like rats that live in areas of darkness. They love light. They swarm along rare sources of light and eat it. They proliferate wildly whenever they get into places that have natural light. Sometimes people like to keep them as pets, but the problem is that if they get away, then they will go and start eat light sources. Not all gloom rat infestations are mistakes, though. They're pretty convenient for thieves to just be like, go eat the light sources. They have light snack, where they try to counteract your light stuff. They inflict gloom fever, which can cause light blindness and dazzled. However, if you might actually want to get to the maximum stage of this, because you can gain dark vision from this. But you would still take a penalty to all visual perception checks and be blinded by light, but you could gain dark vision.
There you
if
go.
you want.
What about the genius loci?
Genius loci are sort of the personalities of significant places that manifest as spirit of the land. They can when they can shift the paths around them to reduce the speed of creatures that try to come toward them. They can alter the terrain to change like normal terrain to difficult, or difficult into normal or greater. Basically slide the terrain's difficulty by 1, and they can use domain wall based on their type of domain to create like a wall of ice or wall of stone or something like that.
Neat. What about the Eternal Symphony?
Eternal symphonies are constructs that are they are an amalgamation of an entire orchestra's worth of instruments. So they're gonna hit you with their kick drums or their viol. They might bludgeon you with their kick drums, slash you with their violin bows, or do some resonant vibrations for sonic damage. They can quicken themselves. They can create a battle symphony that does mental damage. They can do crescendo to increase the sonic damage that they deal. They can use dissonance to stupefy creatures. They have all kinds of stuff that they do with their music. They're 15th level, so that's why they have so much.
Nice. What about the Eternal Inventor?
Eternal Inventors are undead that are absolutely obsessed with finishing their invention. But the problem with these guys is that they retain kind of that curse of sort of that failed invention.
Did they die from their invention?
They died. They took a mortal wound from an ambitious experiment, and their spirit becomes trapped in their journal, and they come out and they're like, yes, we must do this. We must succeed it. They're generally surrounded by numerous hazards and inventions, which, basically the same thing with them. They can relive catastrophe to replay the accident that claimed their life, doing huge amounts of damage based on what it was. They can fire the Omni Cannon to create a giant cannon that blasts off in a lot of directions. They can, they instantly, if they notice you having resistance or weakness, if you have one, they instantly notice it and then can take it into account for their Omni Cannon in the future. They have some occult spells. They can use explosive insights to do like a ranged attack that does lots of different types of damage. And they have a jinx of instability when you're trying to manipulate things near them. You have to succeed at a will save or injure yourself with the object and take 13 damage of the appropriate type.
What about Emirad?
Emirods are born from the souls of mortals whose songs have stirred the hearts of masses in life. They are celestials who they have sound bolt strikes that they do. They can store up the sonic energy from their sound bolts and sustain it by spending 1 action each turn, and they can sustain for up to 1 minute, and then once they're done with the sustain, they can release it all in a refrain and basically use all of their built up actions to do massive attacks.
Nice. What about Electrum Juggernauts?
Electrum Juggernauts are giant statues made of Electrum, ally of gold and silver. Their weapons are part of their body. They sparkle majestically, can demoralize. Their demoralize is visual instead of auditory, and they can dazzle you. They can do a wide swing with their long sword against lots of creatures. They can attack with their fist. Their gleaming armor. They become physically weakened when their gleaming armor is soiled. So you can weaken them by
vain.
Yes, because they're very vain. Deadstra, withered tree husks that emerge from frozen woodlands. They sap the vitality of creatures. They deal void damage with their icicles. They can blend naturally into frozen woodlands. They can emanate an aura of cold. They can sap heat from you. They're basically gonna freeze you and kill you.
What about the Crystal Wing Swarm?
Crystal Wing Swarms, when they're in bright light, they create a mirage where they appear to be larger than they actually are, which makes it harder to figure out where is the swarm actually. They do dazzling frostbite, which chills you and makes it harder for you to see. And but if you melt them, their wings, then they can't fly around, and
they're like
mirages
ice butterflies.
They're basically ice butterflies, yeah.
Okay. What about the Crystal Chimling?
The Crystal Chimlings are like little chimes. They're made up of 4 chimes, and they harmonically resonate with each other.
Are they chimelings or chimlings?
I don't know. I thought chime because it comes from chime, but...
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. Maybe it's just a long I, even though it doesn't have an E after the M. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's how I thought of it, but there's no pronunciation guide here.
Fair enough.
They resonate to deal sonic damage nearby. They have a sonorous echo. They generally Their songs can bring good fortune to their allies, and they tend to bond for life with their partners.
Aha.
Which makes them seen as a sign of romance and good fortune.
What about Kosiad effects?
Kosiad effects, speaking of butterflies, are basically butterfly effect aeons representing the duality between the perceived randomness events and the complex chains of processes that allow them to occur. They can create cascading disasters where they make a strike, and if the strike hits, they can try to strike another creature within 30 feet and keep going along the chain as long as they keep hitting and they have different creatures to hit. They can create ominous wing beats, which make tornadoes, because of course you're going to do that for the butterfly effect. And they have also a lot of powerful divine innate spells. Mm-hmm. And are vulnerable to randomness.
What about the Conostium Knights?
Conostium Knights happen when a nymph fuses their life force with a dying coral reef. They have poison. They are bioluminescent. They have a coral long spear that's kind of like part of their bodies that they can use to inject venom, and they can draw the vitality out of other creatures. So it's interesting how they're a nymph, but they're also like, because of the connection to the dying coral reef, they're also trying to draw life into them.
Aha. It looks like somebody's critter is in there that was a juggernaut that has a slightly changed name. And Lorelei says, no pronunciation guide. Now, how will they know how to pronounce Stormadillo? Well, I think that's an easy one. Mm-hmm. Cathartic slime.
Cathartic slimes. They live near the edges of bodies of water, particularly ones where intelligent creatures swim. And they feed on emotions. They do emotional drain by grabbing creatures, can potentially stun or paralyze them. They disperse themselves into a body of water, and then they can try to then they can quickly condense themselves out of it, so they're definitely going to ambush you that way.
Nice. What about Calliophants?
Calliophant.
Oh, Calliophants, yes.
They are essentially brass elephants with a body that contains a steam organ. They can attack you with their trunks and tusks and foot. They can crank up the heat. So they have a water reservoir that has a certain number of gallons of water, and then they can expend that water to do a steam scream or to crank up the heat. So that if you touch them and you take fire damage, they can quickly drink water from areas near them too, and they can trample you.
Oh man, and they're mindless.
Yeah.
So you never know what they're gonna do. Mm-hmm. All right, Calamity Gremlin.
Calamity Gremlins are basically you really. I mean, like the food poisoning gremlin was one. You really don't want the Calamity Gremlin near you. They curse areas, so they could spend 8 hours learning a terrible curse upon an area. And then pick a time between a day and a year in the future to create a violent misfortune, like an exploding cannon or collapsing bridge. Basically, they lay a contingent hazard in a location that will occur at a certain time. They can change shape. They can do a deceptive shuffle to stride and feint quickly. They do sneak attack. They have wrecking blows where they have the hardness of walls and things like that. And if they do break their way through something, they can do a free step or stride through the breach. And they attack with warhammers.
If they kill themselves with their own calamity, I think they come back to life.
Yes. If they appear to perish as a result of their own calamity curse, they emerge 2d4 days later, having somehow survived. So a lot of cases, what they can do, right, is they can disguise themselves as just like some rando who appeared to die in the accident, was clearly not responsible, and who possibly could have done this? This person died, and then they reemerge later.
What about Cactopy or Cactopi?
Cactopi are patient plants that generally prize contemplation. They spend a lot of their time talking about philosophy, but if you do bug them, they have like bursts of energy in between their meditations. They have a curious aroma that can confuse people. They can grab you in their roots, and they can burst out with toxic pollen.
Aha, they probably also hang out with lotus sneck.
They probably
What about caviar?
Caviar are large rodents whose fur is
like a capybara?
Yeah, it's kind of like
It's almost capybara, but without the P and then like mixed around.
Yeah, so they have like special light filaments in their fur, which lets them use their kaleidoscopic coat to blend in with their surroundings. They can do a flash of color to gain in their fur to gain concealment against attacks. They can entrance people to dazzle or make them off guard by how cool their pelt looks, and they can do light beam strikes too.
What about a bolt spiker?
Bolt Spiker is when a storm of elemental electricity goes, it makes makes contact with the slumbering potential within conductive crystals. So they're like earth and electricity. They glide through earth and material to charge up power and then do more electricity damage. They can generate a powerful electric current to ride the lightning through the air. They can zap down with bolt spikes and use lightning whips and crystal lances.
Nice. What about Bulbalos?
Bulbalos are big sapient mushrooms. They are friendly and jovial folk, but if you do wind up fighting against them, they have a blundering slam where they use their giant bellies to smack any enemies nearby. They can shove creatures up to 2 sizes larger themselves with their bellies. They have a sticky slime that they can attack with their red slime if they want to. They can trample and knock people prone, and they're very curious. So they're off guard until they've acted when their first round, but they get upset if you attack them from when they're like, oh, what's going on? And then they become quickened on their first turn if you do attack them.
What about Beat Hopper?
Beat Hoppers are fae whose performances affect the internal clocks of those around them. Everyone is considered an ally of theirs unless they succeeded a will save to avoid this. They have a bunch of occult spells, and they have a resonant tempo where they can use. They have Courageous Anthem, Rallying Anthem, and Triple Time, and when they use those, they have extra abilities that they generate. So the Courageous Anthem can make steady hearts, so the creatures are immune to quicken and slowed. Rallying Anthem slows creatures down, and Triple Time speeds creatures up.
What about the Azapis Seed?
So Azapis are gravity-defying legendary beanstalks, and Azapis seeds are the seeds of those. The problem is that gravity-defying legendary beanstalk needs great ground to settle onto, and so the seed kind of floats around and looks for a place, and it's like, oh, there's buildings in the way. I'm going to crush and destroy everything. So you want to, when you see one of those, you probably want to try to redirect it to settle somewhere else. They create crushing gales that stomp. It creates a giant cylinder that crushes things. They create lightning storms. They have greater constrict. They have a super storm aura that makes it really hard to fly.
So they just destroy your town so that there's space for the beanstalk.
Yeah, they're going to destroy your town to make space for the beanstalk.
Got it. What about the Attunement Arsenal?
Attunement Arsenals are creatures that come when people are trying to make a focus for planar travel, and that fails, and there's basically a bunch of failed spatial magic that's then glommed together into a construct. They are vulnerable to teleportation, but they heal from sonic damage and things like that. They can when they attack you with their teleportation beam, then they create stomach churning teleportation that moves you in a direction of their choice. It might sicken you. They create a resounding clash with their fists that deals sonic damage and teleports you closer to them. So they have a lot of sonic stuff and also weird teleportation things going on.
What about Astral Flotsam? Is that just Flotsam in the astral plane?
Yeah, so it's the collective spirit of adventure that kind of gathers up in the astral plane. Explorers desperately seeking to find something far from home. When their quest ends in failure, the dream lives on. So it's basically a collection of dreams.
Is it like a collection of Don Quixote's failed regrets or something like that?
Yes, basically. They create a psychic vortex that can stupefy you. They can try to overwhelm you with the intensity of their dreams to deal damage and make you off guard. They also have wave crash and water jet stuff and some magic, some kind of water magic. But they because they're relying on these strands, they can become weaker if you cut their strands.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what about Argentarum?
Argentarum. It was a very interesting creature to think about the formatting for, because Argentarum is actually 2 creatures in 1 stat block. There is a gold one and a silver one. They can they share their life force with each other to equalize their hit points. They can share their minds to defend themselves against will saves or to do perception checks or initiative rolls to take the higher. They can expose. They're always flanking when they're fighting the same creature. They can tear. They can create wounds. The The gold one does like a throat rip thing with its jaws that deals piercing damage and like makes it hard to speak. The silver one like does bleed damage, so they work together in tandem.
What about Archival Monitor?
Archival monitors have crystalline memory. They can use genealogy lore to recall knowledge about topics related to their ancestors. They're large reptiles with giant crystalline crests protruding from their head that have the collective memories of their ancestors. They can create a kaleidoscopic cage that traps creatures inside of it and then boils them with fire damage. They can create giant solar beams that they can bounce off of things.
Nice.
There's animated orchestras are mindless swarm of instruments, shall we say. They have a brass, percussion, and strings attack to do all kinds of different damages
and all
kinds
of
different
woodwind
shapes.
Reaction.
And a woodwind reaction to play a frenzied melody to give themselves some defenses.
What about Amutu?
Amutu are psychopomps who try to interact with the living. Generally, they are tasked with dealing with deaths caused by resource scarcity, like starvation, dehydration, and exposure to the elements. They travel far and wide to offer warnings and try to protect people against those calamities, and when prevention is impossible, they help guide the souls to the afterlife. They have an ominous, scary hoot. They can create food and water, make themselves invisible, and the usual kind of spirit touch things you expect from psychopomps.
What about the Amphitwister?
Amphitwister are creature constructs made from theater props and just the emotions surrounding a stressful theater production.
So it's like a cyclone of theater props and stress?
It's a cyclone of theater props and stress. They can barrage you with props. They can arrange themselves into like kind of a swarm with places please. They can inject mirror shards. They can use a fashion disaster to dress people in clothing that looks ridiculous and slows them down.
That's funny.
And they can, if you try to do emotion stuff, they're like, no, protect the scene.
What about the Amber Bramble?
Amber Brambles. These were another one that wound up being renamed. They have a foliage body, so they can hide and seek in forests. They can do a reactive splash. If you hit them with piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage to fling sap at you, they attack with their thorns and globs of cloying sap, which they can spray at you and poison you.
Nice.
And they like to collect all sorts of treasures inside of them.
What about Alvalek?
Alvalek. Whether to the songs of creation, the music in their minds, they're always dancing. They are not immobilized when they're grabbed by creatures because they're just dancing. They are going to force you to dance with them, and while you are dancing with them, then your speed might change. You can be violently repositioned. You can have all sorts of stuff going on with that.
What about Woodpluck Elder?
So you may have wondered, hey, we were going in reverse
Well, don't
order.
tell them what the order is. We don't even know what the order is.
Well,
I literally don't know what the order is. I don't know why it went to Woodpluck.
Well, it may have seen. So. Well, someone said they didn't see theirs, so it seemed like we were going in reverse alphabetical order, but we are going in the order of this page.
Yeah, so we don't know what it is. So don't try to tell them what it is.
Well, no, I said you may have
literally
thought.
don't know what it
I
is.
said you may have thought that's what we were doing because someone said they thought they missed theirs, but that's not it.
You did not miss yours.
We are going in the order of this
page. It could be anything. I think it's like certain cycles that are roughly in reverse alphabetical order. So just stay tuned. There's more to go.
So we have the Woodplucks. Starting with the Woodpluck. So Woodplucks are little fey creatures who manifest their imagination in the form of creating temporary wooden objects. Their leaders are the Woodpluck Elders, who have the ability to cultivate mounts. Little wooden mounts. They can stampede on their mounts and do all sorts of wood magic spells in addition to creating weapons and other items. Woodpluck Chorus is when you get them all together into a swarm. They can create like gliders that they use to fly, or like all kinds of attacks that they can do, because they can be like, yes, now we all have long swords or what have you. They can use their group imagination for that and do like a wooden flurry, and they can try to do like a party, like yay, and to cause creature to have to like move around and dance with them.
What about Woodplucks?
The regular Woodplucks can try to fascinate you, and they can create like basically common level 0 stuff, or they can try to merge in with trees.
So they're the starting Woodplucks.
They're the starting Woodplucks, level 2 creatures.
What about Whalefellers?
Whalefellers are aquatic fae that come about when there is an ecosystem that arises from, say, a dead whale or something. A fallen massive carcass like a whale or a kraken that bursts a threatening ecosystem, but eventually the resources run out. And they are trying to sustain their ecosystem by finding new creatures to slay and move their corpses to their area, whether that be a large whale or kraken that they are felling, or whether that be your ship that they have decided to hunt.
What about the Waltzing Willow?
Waltzing Willow are creatures that they're surrounded by the spirit lights of 4 musicians that they can move around and use to. They can shine a spotlight on you. And be like, ha, yes, now it is time for you to perform. And depending on how well you perform, you might take horrific strain on your body. They can do a 2-step waltz to move quickly. And if you kill them, you can become cursed and never hear music again.
What about Volt Ram? Is that a friend of Stormadillo?
It could easily be, yes. They can charge up electricity, store charge when they charge, and then they can use discharge to explode it in crackling lightning. They can also reactively zap you if you hit them with metal weapons.
What about the Vernal?
The Vernal are a part of the cycle of Grand Prize winner. They have a booming cloak. When you try to hinder their passage, they can do you sonic damage. They can try to drown you out if you're doing things with the auditory and sonic trait. They're tempestuous, fickle maestros of the seasonal fae cycle. They have electric instruments that deal sonic and electricity damage. They've got a bunch of primal spells. They can cast electricity arc with a different number of actions to like either target one creature or like do more damage or things like that. And they can do a thunderous retreat from their enemies.
For those of you not up on the fancy adjectives about seasons, Vernal are spring-based. Mm-hmm. What about Venopath?
Venopath are named for their ability to telepathically inject venomous thoughts into the minds of others. These creatures are literally so toxic that if too many of them gather in one place, they kill each other. So
what?
They have to be in like small.
Is that like
settlements.
a weakness of theirs that they just all die?
It's in their lore.
Oh,
so
it's in
like
their lore. Okay.
Because you're not probably going to build an encounter that's too large.
Where they all just kill each
other. They cooperate in small circles, and they cooperate in small circles. They poison each other. They do like toxic intimidation with their emotive toxin, and like if you try to communicate with them mentally, it's really bad news for you.
What about the Vengeful Doormat?
Vengeful Doormats have had enough of you wiping their feet on them. How they respond to this? They have a vulnerability to feet. They take additional
like if
damage
you
from
do
strikes
foot
with feet.
damage and tramples and stuff.
Yes, exactly. They have dirty retribution where they fling dirt at you. Exactly what their vengeance takes, it depends on like how angry they are. Some of them might be content just with like messing your house and making it filthy, and some of them might want to kill you.
Fair enough. What about Unbound Arboreal?
Unbound Arboreals are one of the things about them is that they pass through a cycle of seasons and change their powers based on that. They can make you stumble with their roots. Whenever they would die, we reduce the 0 hit points, but their wounded value is 2 or less. Their trunk splits, crashing down their foes before rewinding time to go back to standing. So they can like reactively have a false felling where they keep coming back up. In the winter, they deal a bunch of cold damage. And in the summer, they make a lot of difficult terrain and grab people. In the spring, they can like heal living creatures or harm undead. And in the autumn, they can create like a giant whirl of razor leaves.
Yeah, I remember these guys. I just wrote a story about a corrupted one as a boss for a much lower level party where they try to kite it, but it's pulling people into the aura. They do their best. Mm-hmm. What about Ugadalu?
Ugadalu, root walkers. They are sadistic creatures with comprised of gnarled wood with large masks for faces. They generally subjugate small settlements and rule through terror. They have a jump scare ability where they basically pretend to be a statue and they're like, prah! And they pop out and attack you, but they have a vulnerability to fear. They are, and this also applies if they see, they become frightened if they see another Ugadalu, whether it's another one of them, a creature wearing an Ugadalu mask, or a clear reflection of their own face. So they're like kind of afraid of fear and get pretty messed up.
Only thing that they have to fear is fear itself.
Yes.
What about the Trench Lord?
Trench Lord are elemental that live on around hydrothermal vents. So they have benthic compression to pressurize your body and expose it to rapid compression and decompression. They create cloud. They're constantly emitting a sulfide cloud, dealing poison damage. They can create giant torrents of water, poisonous fire vents. They can pull you in. They can do riptide rushes. They have excellent mobility in the water. You really don't want to be fighting one of those underwater.
What about time warps?
Time warps. They can accelerate time around them to expose people to entropic forces, damaging and potentially quickening you. They can also decelerate time to slow you down and deal mental damage from kind of like the sensation of disrupted time. They can do They can do time lapse strikes. They can counteract all sorts of magic, but they are themselves vulnerable to time magic.
Can they eat your quickened or slowed condition to do some other additional effect to you? So it's oh yeah, it quickened you. That's nice, but then it eats it and then deals you mental damage. Yeah, if they attack you
when you're with their strike, if you're slowed or quickened, they can dispel it and then mess with you further.
Let's see here. People are saying the arboreal sounds really interesting with the season cycling. Yeah, it can cycle through the seasons backwards or forwards. Although the corrupted one in the story was able to hop across seasons.
Time warps can do it.
Wherever they wanted to. What about the Forge Master, unique level 23?
Yes. So the Forge Master is one of those creatures of epic stories. They dwell in the heart of the world. They're deep within. They're a primordial entity of creation that can basically build and forge anything that they want. They can... Their weapons kind of start off as a +3 major striking warhammer and +3 returning major striking javelin, but they can reforge their hammer into any one-handed melee weapon that they feel like. They have massive reach. They can reach through the stone to make strikes against any creature they can see.
That is massive reach. When you said massive reach, I was like, how massive is it?
If they see you, they can attack you.
Okay.
2 actions, but still, what the heck? They can declare you unworthy of wielding your weapon, damaging you and potentially forcing you to drop your weapon. Particularly bad news if you are yourself an intelligent weapon that have been deemed unworthy of wielding yourself and you go into an existential crisis.
That is very bad. What about a Tabilda?
A Tabilda is an unusual spirit that's found in places where frost is feared and life often hinges on the strength of fire. They have a heart flame that it's fragile and difficult to maintain. It can get extinguished when they take damage. But they have an aura that gives cold resistance to people. They can blast out fire. They can kindle flames, including their hearth flame, and they can do a fire infusion into their attacks.
What about the Synthesite Vivisectionist?
So a Synthesite Vivisectionist is a flesh warp, a person whose body and mind has been corrupted by a sentient poison called Synthesite Substrate. Poison came from Velstrack demagogues seeking to, quote, improve mortal life. They have a pain sight to see creatures that are in pain. They can use their bone size strikes to try to radically alter someone's body. Their sentient poison can transform you to another one of them. They can knock you down. They're just really nasty creatures.
What about a Storm Conductor?
Storm Conductor. That is the other conductor.
That's the nasty one.
The nasty conductor. They can do a tuning to attempt a performance check against the will DCs of everyone nearby to potentially force you to perform on your next turn.
They actually are weak to sonic damage because if it's slightly off key, then it makes them angry.
Also, if they can they'll really focus their attacks on you. They can. If a creature within 60 feet they can hear fails a performance check, they can just zap them as a free action. Which, if you're why would you perform near them if you're bad at it? Well, tuning is going to force you to. So they're going to force you to perform it and then tell you suck.
What about the Stackerix?
The Stackerix is an undead, basically an undead phoenix creature. They are surrounded in an ash storm mantle. They can try to disrupt your actions if you try to concentrate anywhere near them. They are weak to having their ashes scattered. They deliver choke and embers to you. They quickly fly, and they darken the skies wherever they go, and they burn everything.
What about Splinter Tooth?
Splinter Tooth is something that you might initially think is a hazard when you come across it because the floor is trying to eat you. They live in old abandoned houses and other places like that in the border between the universe and the netherworld. They'll try to swallow you. If you haven't noticed them, they'll just and bite you. They can attack you with their jaws or furniture pieces, spread or splinter, and they're invisible in areas of dim light or darkness also.
What about shrub merged?
Shrub merged are plants that are, submerged. They live in swamps. They can try to trap you with their roots. They've got a murky camouflage where they hide in the muddy water, and they can collect the mud particles in the water to try to mystically impede people as well as walking across the water. And they're surrounded by a personal swamp that makes it difficult terrain to move near them. And they also have a wall of shrubbery. Sealed mummies are like the mummy, but also their sarcophagus around the mummy. They raise the lid of the sarcophagus like a shield, and they can either be in lid attached mode or lid detached mode. In lid attached mode, they're more defended because they can use it as a shield. But in lid detached mode, they can like fly their shield around and bash you with it.
Mm-hmm. What about the Scoopa?
Scoopa are creatures that they're monitors. They try to organize everything. They are prideful, little peacock-looking creatures that display their tail feathers in a fascinating pattern. They can use telekinetic hands to like manipulate things because they don't have other normal hands. They can analyze your armor to try to use crafting to find a weakness in your armor as well. To be more effective in their attacks against you.
What about the rot hive?
Rot hives are created when flesh-eating wasps or bees infuse a corpse with void energy in it. They can speak with wasps. They have a disorienting drone that stupefies you. You can deal with them by surrounding them in smoke and putting them into a smoke sleep. And they have a poisonous corpse honey.
Nice. What about Ramor?
Ramor are creatures that are they have like this sort of story of like, oh, people have disappeared and Ramor might have spirited them away. But generally what they do is they find people who are in really unfortunate situations and they spirit them away to safety. They can create a spirit nova that deals massive spirit damage. They have a cloak of stars that they can bring creatures into and protect them and bring them until they can bring them far away. So they are quite high level and powerful beings.
What about the quietest silencer demon?
So these guys are hilarious. So these guys will hush you. They put their finger to their lips. If you quietly, they're gonna they've silenced you and then you try to like do something. They're like shh, and reactively like their hushing is so annoying you take mental damage. So they silence people. They steal their voices. They can cause you to not. When they steal your voice, they can speak using your voice and cast spells using you as their origin point potentially, which is not good for you. And they have Louden spell, which causes their spells to also deafen you because they're screaming so loud.
Because they are hypocritically loud, even though they make you be quiet.
Correct.
What about puddle hoppers?
Puddle hoppers are frog-like fae that jump from puddle to puddle. They can leap into nearby bodies of water very quickly. They can do an unnerving leap in like bruh when they first pop out of the water. And they can reactively hop around too. They have sticky feet and jets of water.
What about the pilfermen?
Pilfermens are kind of like what's mine is yours. They are fae who really want to just collect other people's stuff.
So it's more what yours is mine, I guess.
Yes, what's yours is mine. They can do like fair trade. They'll offer you, they have trinkets that they carry with them. They can try to offer you the trinket. And if you accept the trinket, you gain a bonus to AC against them. But then you choose to cause your attack to automatically miss.
So they do also give you stuff too.
Yeah, they do.
So it's both.
They trade the trinkets, but they also do Mind Now, where they have like extra ability to steal stuff, like some of those high level stealth or thievery skill feats. They have mobility and sneak attack. They can grab trinkets into their hand once per round as a free action. They've got a bunch of occult spells too, and they can Don't You Remember Me, where they pretend to be someone that you totally knew all along and therefore be willing to give your stuff to.
So the parallel present, I think, is the last one with the future and the past.
Yeah. So this is what happens like when a creature is drawn into a parallel reality where it shouldn't exist.
Just from an alternate timeline? From
alternate timelines and things like that, exactly. They can use the condensed timeline to anchor you to the present moment and slow you. They can create duplicates of themselves and then roll twice and take the better result. They can do a convergence strike where they vanish, where they and their duplicates go next to it, the creature, and then do like a really damaging convergence timeline strike. They force bolts, they flicker in form, they can swap place with their duplicates. They are dangerous.
What about Oligtharu, Time Demon?
Time Demons, level 21.
Are those the retcon demons
Yes.
that just do something and then force it to happen and back in time?
So once per day, they cast Fabricated Truth. If at least one creature fails to save, the fabrication is consistent with that creature's knowledge of the world. And the Oligtharu imagines a possible chain of past events to justify the fabrication. They can alter the time stream to change the fabrication into truth, which persists as long as at least one creature believes it. So it can't introduce hazards or creatures of 20th level or higher, but it can really just like retcon reality in their favor in a massive way. They have huge amounts of powerful divine innate spells. They can cause like a temporal vertigo with their claw slashes. And their vulnerability, because demons always have it, is when their fabricated truth or rewrite memory is counteracted. They're like, oh, why are you reasserting reality? Ugh.
What about the Necrosis engine? That was one of like the first animated tokens that Steven put out, and I remember it looks really cool in the art.
Yeah, so the Necrosis engines are machines of death animated by powerful fiends. They siphon off the souls of living creatures. They rev their engine to blast out fire damage. They inflict fiendish wounds that are hard to heal, and they absorb the souls of the dead.
What about Muse Worms?
Muse Worms are prideful dragons who are patrons of the arts. They have the power to inspire creativity in others within their layers. They have a charming presence, and they can inspire people around them to greatness. They've got a bunch of music-y occult spells and a kaleidoscopic scream.
What about Monolithic Cube?
So Monolithic Cube is a giant cubic construct, and the way that it moves is take your cube, take your d6, and roll it from face to face. That's the way this thing moves.
And it's 15 feet long, so
Yes.
it can only move exactly 15 feet by just turning the cube over onto the next face.
Yes. It does have an ability, a cubic movement. It can do a 2-action activity to
To like
step.
shove itself
Just be like, ugh.
5 feet, but it's slow.
Yeah, 2 actions per 5 feet if it's not just rolling along. They crush and grind creatures under their faces. They are not affected by difficult terrain or anything like that. Just purr. They have construct armor. If you smash it, then you get to the mercury in the inside and they're quickened. And can hit you with mercury jets.
What about Mirthless?
Mirthless are bitter fae that are overcome by regrets, and they want you to be overcome by regrets too. They have a contagious misery poison that causes you to take poison damage and fall prone and potentially become frightened. They have a mug of poison tears that they can use to pour into your mouth to expose you to that poison and slow you down. They have sneak attack, surprise attacker, and they want you to join them in their sadness.
What about the Maleficent Hive?
Maleficent Hive. They appear to be papery humanoids at first glance, but they are actually a complex nest, piloted by intelligent psychic honey wasps. They can swarm out in a surge. They have their honey is can heal living creatures, and they can either be when they're surged out, then they gain some of the weaknesses of swarms, which they don't when they're
So they have nice honey instead of the poisonous honey
exactly.
from the
They
rot hive.
can harmonically buzz their rapier to deal extra sonic.
What about Lyodamon, Isolation Damon?
They personify death through loneliness and separation from others, especially deaths of lone travelers who die from exposure. They like to isolate and terrorize people on cold winter nights. They have a variety of cold-based divine spells. They can do a crushing sweep where they attack a lot of creatures and push them over. And they can create an illusion of isolation where you can't see your allies, so you can't target them with stuff.
Uh-huh. What about Living Lightning Rod?
Living Lightning
Is
Rod.
that similar to the Weatherbane?
Well, these are a mindless construct instead of an angry spirit. They absorb electricity that is near them. They become charged and can zap that electricity out. They can use a magnetic pull, and basically, what their general thing is that they're going to do is they're going to grab you. If you're nearby, they're going to grab you in their fists and then zap you. If you're not, they're going to lash out with lightning coils, and they gather charge as well once per round to do a bigger zap.
What about Laylaps? That's like the legend of the hound that was destined to always catch its target, and there was a fox who was destined to always get away, and then they both got turned to stone because the Greek gods are like, this is a paradox where they're chasing each other.
Yes. So the Laylaps, when they have hunt prey, they designate a creature to be better at tracking, like a ranger. They have relentless pursuit, where once per minute, if you grapple, immobilize, petrify, paralyze, etc., including petrify them, they can remove it, but then they increase their drain value by 1 for an hour. So once per minute,
It sounds like they wouldn't have been able to turn it to stone then.
Well, they would, because they can only do it until they get to drain 4.
Oh, okay.
So they would have had to try a few times. Maybe they're gods; they can get past that.
Probably.
They can walk on air as if it were solid ground if the weather is stormy or violent. And they have a howling pursuit.
Where they
Where
howl
they
after
howl
you
and frighten
pursuit.
you and then run after you. Yep.
What about the lace hag?
So lace hags are pretty wild. These guys have a special realm in the Dreamlands where their hag nature is heightened and they get all kinds of spells. They're going to try to pull you into it by connecting you to lace that they've enchanted. And this is one where, PCs are going to need to kind of go into the dream realm to get them, because if you want to free someone that's trapped in their lace, the best way to do it is to kill them and take their lace shears and then cut them out.
Yeah, I remember we did a story about these where some of the other characters entered the dream realm of the people who have been trapped in the dream realm in order to help save them from the attack. All right, so after Lace Hag is the Kunthalaka.
Kunthalaka, they are Rakshasa. They have stridulation, where they rub their mandibles together hypnotically and try to ensnare and fascinate creatures. They have a clumsy and stupefying neurotoxin. They've got all sorts of divine spells, and they are basically, their goal is to drive creative souls toward artistic burnout.
Mm-hmm. What about hibernals?
They are part of our said seasonal cycle. They create wintry gusts, but they also can create food and use environmental endurance. They're sort of they're shy and cheerful winter fae that try to support others in times of cold and darkness.
Which is very dissimilar to hate mongers.
Alright, so hate mongers basically try to suck up hatred, prejudice, and paranoia and stoke them. They give bonuses to... If they spend a minute talking to a willing creature, they can amplify the creature's hatred to give them bonuses against the creatures that they hate. They can use stoke hatred to buff creatures by inspiring hatred and fear and violence. They can use echo chamber to feed on the fear of those around them. They can use suggestion and phantom pain and zealous condition, mind probe to try to probe into things, and then get them a reaction to direct their followers to get revenge. So basically, they're just trying to stoke prejudice and fear and division and destroy society.
What about the Gun Grove? Is it a grove of guns?
Gun Grove is a mangrove, often mistaken for a harmless cannonball mangrove, but it is in fact not. They can propel themselves out of water with a burst of immature cannon fruit. They can deploy saplings and try to have them take root. They can use their cannon fruit as a cannon at long range.
Nice. What about the Gas Belly Goblin?
So gas belly goblins are one of the mutations that goblins have developed by virtue of their alchemical experimentation. They are able to... They take the iron stomach of goblins to new heights. Literally, they can fly with the gas that's in their bellies. They can spit up and slash by spitting up poison from their stomachs and slashing with it. They can do a belching jet to fly through the air, and they bounce off of things because of their big gas-filled stomachs.
What about Fractrix?
Fractrixes are kind of like fractal creatures. They have really confusing geometry that makes you potentially be confused just by being near them. They can angle their bodies because they're two-dimensional to align themselves to become invisible, and warp geometry around them to bend space and move creatures in all sorts of weird ways.
What about the Ferris Crab Swarm? Is it like iron crabs?
Yeah, so Ferris crabs are elementals that live around volcanoes, filtering out molten iron and other metals from them. They can reverse the polarity to use magnetic propulsion on creatures that are carrying metal objects. They can do like molten digestion to help digest metals, and they can crush you as well.
What about ferrofluidic ooze?
Ferrofluidic oozes are wild. They can use a magnetic hole when you deal slashing damage to them to quickly reform and then try to grab you up into their body. They can have trouble if they get demagnetized by taking huge amounts of fire damage at the same time. They can immerse creatures in their magnetic fluid or draw metal toward themselves as well.
What about the Fallout Sparrow Swarm?
Fallout Sparrow Swarm are like animals that are affected by magical fallout. They can use a strange murmuration when they're targeted by a spell to just swoop right up into your face. They have a sickening fallout aura. They can do a devastation mimic to frighteningly mimic the sounds of explosions, collapses, and screams, and rain down poisonous radiation. Nice, or not nice, as the case may be. What about Unidoi? Unidoi are Quilpas. They are sadistic killers. They look kind of like the Titanic cave worms, but like with more eyeballs. Their mouths are shallow caverns filled with toxic mucus and spines. They generally prefer to wait around for places for others to approach, so they'll go to places near conflict and then grab people. They ambush you. They do a frightening display. They rot your minds. They tunnel through rocks. They're just nasty and inexorable burrowers. What about Endless Growth? Endless Growth is a plant that is where core vitality energy, because, vitality energy, people generally think of it, oh, that's nice, it's vitality energy, but it's also, like, basically cancerous in this case. They have it's like a cancer tree? It's basically a cancer tree, yeah. They have an infectious growth where they can use parasitic tumors on creatures and then attach them to the creature and try to suck away their life fluids to drain them out. They use flesh conversion disease that sickens you and eventually gains you fast healing and life sense and regeneration and all kinds of stuff, and then you die and turn into one of them. What about a drum cap? Drum caps. Friendly little plants. They have little drum hats. They use their drumstick arms to play their drum hats, and they're fascinatingly cute, and they have psychedelic spores. What about Dimension Ooze? Dimension Oozes. Take form around significant releases of space-bending magic. They're drawn to feed on those kinds of sources of magic, whether it's like an interdimensional portal or if you happen to buy a spacious pouch and you're like, what is this thing? They squeeze through the cracks in the physical world. They have a 5-foot move, but they have dimension squeeze, so they can treat any space within 30 feet as adjacent to themselves. They can I see. So they like open a little portal and then move 5 feet to the thing within 30 feet. Correct, exactly. And they can withdraw into temporary extra-dimensional spaces or eat your dimensional magic. What about the Dewdrop Ooze? Dewdrop Ooze is like, you have like the glittering dew on the spider web or the leaves or the grass or whatever. And it cobbles itself together and forms into a coherent entity, and then deals a bunch of acid damage and engulfs you. Wow. It's a mindless ooze, so it's pretty dangerous compared to what you would think of a dewdrop ooze. It's not just one little dewdrop. Yeah, it's not one dewdrop. It's like this entire field of dew is actually this very one dangerous ooze. Creature. Corpse flower. What about them? Are they like a giant rafflesia? Yeah, so they're carnivorous plants. Gouge out enough undead flesh. They can gain affinity for the necromantic arts. They can ensnare corpses, ritually drink their fluids, and reanimate them as independent vine mummies. They can spray corpse pollen that deals void damage. They can command their vine mummies, and they're sickening, or they have a sickening stench to them as well. What about the coal drake? Also known as mine serpents or saboteur drakes. They live in cavernous environments and are seriously problems for mining crews. They have a coal dust breath where they spew forth coal dust and then they use a spark to light it on fire with their flint sparks and blind and dazzle people, and they can surge as quickly like a lot of other drakes can. What about Chronos Algorithm? Chronos Algorithm are a creation of diviners who are trying to create the secrets of perfect clairvoyance, but there was a glitch in the algorithm's code. They can create recursive loops to create a duplicate of itself, and then both copies make a strike, and then after both strikes are made, then one of those is the reality that actually existed. They can reconfigure time to choose a creature that's benefiting from the quick condition and try to counteract it, and then it make itself quickened and you slowed. Their calculated agility, their map is just better than everyone else's. And they have a retcon reaction. Yeah, they have a reaction. They have a retroactive continuity. Literally, retcon is the reaction. They can predict an attack and change history to avoid it, gaining a +4 circumstance to AC against a triggering strike, and then relocating to space within 5 feet, as it is altering events rather than physically moving. This is not a movement or teleportation effect.
What about the Kyanad Shadow?
So Kynads are sort of a mountain, kind of a frozen boreal mountain nymph type creature. And Kynad shadows are what happens when a Kynad loses connection to their mountain home. They're cold and darkness. They can instill loneliness in others to prevent them from treating others as allies or receiving the assistance of others. They can doom and drain you, and they've also got all kinds of ice magic. Kyanad queens, as you might expect, nymphs have queens. They have an aurora of light, and a radiant burst that they can do, and they are tied to the land and have lots and lots of primal spells. Kynads also have that aurora. It's basically like a line of light that, and then when they're in the aurora form, they gain some resistances, but they also can deal damage in that form.
What about they told us how the creator of it told us how to pronounce it before. It's Ceasg.
Yeah. So these guys have keep their soul in a magical container made from a hollow piece of organic material.
Was it like Kesk or something like that? Something like that. I can't remember,
unfortunately. They can be fascinated and enthralled by music. They protect hostage the creature within their stomach that would be reduced to 0 hit points or die of suffocation. They just automatically protect them. So they distrust humanoids, and they have a tendency to take hostages to get what they want, and they can grant people's wishes.
What about a Cascadian?
They are an elemental of earth and water. When a wrathful earth elemental strays through a waterfall, there's a small chance that their crashing water soothes their itch to break trees and bones. And so they are kind of more enlightened. They can share their enlightenment, which causes you to become immobilized but gain tremor sense and wave sense. As you
so they're kind of chill and they're meditating.
Chill and they're meditative creatures, yeah. Well, and they can attune themselves with nature as well, and they can, when you hit them with a melee strike, they can surge back.
So this is like the stereotypical meditate under a waterfall.
Yes,
to gain oneness.
Yes, exactly.
What about brain case?
So brain cases are survivors. Long ago, there was a ritual where people tried to master elemental force by transcending their bodies. And they're like, I am a floating brain. I am better than you. So they have a cranial shell that protects their body, so that breaks the first time they would be reduced to their Kisig. Okay.
It's Kisig. There you go. So the cranial shell is like sort of around their brain. Don't they have like these giant
so they create
hands?
A lot of things out of force. So they have the 6 palm stance. They conjure a massive 6-armed torso out of elemental force. They can telekinetically shove you. They can telekinetically trip you. They can trap you in a force bubble, raise you up really high, pop the bubble, and drop you to the ground. They're all about like force effects. Absolutely.
And then blood fern.
Blood fern resemble a massive fern with lots of spiky leaves. And a pulsing heart at the center of it. They have, if you bite into them, then they'll explode with toxic nectar. Their roots leach your vital energy. They can uproot themselves, leap, and then crash down on you to grab you as well. And they have like rotten seeds. They're going to grab you with their roots, and they're very good at disguising themselves.
Our most recent story on the newsletter was an underlevel party having to fight 2 of these, and their most important thing in that fight was actually the rotten seed ranged attack, due to the fact that the party was trying to attack them from as far away as possible.
So they couldn't be hit by the uproots.
They couldn't be hit by anything else except for the rotten seeds. But eventually they were forced to go into melee because they went into a part of the forest that was like a little thicker, and they couldn't see them from far enough away that it was multiple.
So they are plant undead.
Yeah, it was a nasty, nasty problem.
Autumnal. I bet you can guess what part of the seasonal cycle they're from.
They're the original grand prize winner. The others were created after the fact.
When a living creature near them dies, they are strengthened by their fleeting life essence. They can mark a creature for reaping, which causes them to take additional precision damage whenever they're being attacked. They can move very quickly through the area. They have all sorts of primal spells as well, and slash into you with their leaf blades.
What about the Arhabaki Icon Angel?
So they are So the story behind these is that when early mortals abandoned ancient spirits that they worshipped, some of the neglected spirits turned to despair, where others became these sorts of protectors. They have an aura of healing. They're encased in powdery armor, which is kind of like the construct armor that you might be familiar with, but affects their... but they're faster, but not as good at healing. Whenever it's broken, they can reactively protect people. They can do rituals. They can turn into statue form. They got a lot of spells. They got a lot going on. They're level 15.
What about amplifiers?
Amplifiers are extreme. They're part of a culture of a subculture of automata who enjoy fighting each other. They basically do robot music duels. Essentially, they amp up their volume to ear-shattering levels, and they can jarringly interrupt you when you're trying to do something with a giant blast of noise. They have a rigidly resilient hardcore that they use to protect
hardcore.
Exactly. When that chassis is cracked, then they take more damage, but they also deal more sonic damage as their force leaves.
What about Agieft?
Agiefts are fae that are like, it's the dose that makes the poison. They kind of dance on the line between both poison and healing. They have these poisons that are like helpful ? But not really. So like their meddling poison gives you fast healing, but also makes you clumsy, enfeebled, and stupefied. And then their whimsy, when you recover to a lower stage of it, instead of taking damage for the new stage, you recover hit points based on how much you would have otherwise taken.
So it does massive damage if you do badly on it, but if you do well on it, it actually heals you.
Yeah, they can easily administer poison with their attacks, and they can manipulate toxins to make people easier for people to make saves, or change them into will saves instead of fortitude saves, which can be really nasty.
And lastly, from the grand prize, Estival.
They like to rest, and then whenever they're not resting, they can get a burst of angry activity.
Summer Blaze.
They can use heat. They can give you heat stroke by making you fatigued. They can move up and deal persistent fire damage. They can tell you to rest a while. And attempt an athletics check to trip you whenever you're trying to move away from them. And they have a cloak of wildfire that they carry with you. Generally, they're slowed 1 and under Sanctuary, but if they take damage, they're awakened and like, and then they become quickened and deal extra fire damage.
So that is all 152 creatures.
I see the comment there.
Bestiary.
So that's the canister tree that murders you with horrifying positive energy sickness. And then we have the drum cows, frightened little mushroom folks who drum on their head. Yes.
Yes, it is definitely a contrast there. There's all sorts of different creatures that you can find. So, that's all 152 creatures. Now, which piece of art do people want to see? We'll put up a few if we have them. Someone asked for the Zenarian, I think, which is one of the few that does not have art.
Yes. Those ones, as a matter of fact, were so complicated to describe that I needed to take a second stab at their art briefs because they were too hard.
They're too hard for the artists. So,
yes.
So what do you think? You can let us know in the chat, and we'll put up a few pictures here as we move to the end. We're not going to have a poll for the next Saturday's episode because of the fact this was a special interrupting episode that was asked for on Discord, and so we have what would have been this Saturday's episode that'll come next Saturday.
So we have Vengeful Crab Bowl, Life Spark Bandit.
Okay, let's get the Vengeful Crab Ball and the Life Spark Bandit. We've got those. I know I've seen the Vengeful Crab Ball recently. So we'll grab the Vengeful Crab Ball so that we have Vengeful Crab Ball. Linda is laughing at it. Let's see, how do I...
open it?
I guess open it to then save it?
Yeah, and then save it.
Alright. So we'll save the image as...
Just put it on my desktop or downloads, either way.
Crab Ball, and then we'll go back and we'll grab the Bandit. Life Spark Bandit, right?
Bandit, yep.
Here it is, the Life Spark Bandit. So Linda likes both of these pictures anecdotally. So we've got Vengeful and Bandit.
Let's get those in.
So and then let's grab them and put them into here. So I'm going to plus a picture. Image. Vengeful. Okay. Then we're going to look through the browse downloads, grab the Vengeful Crab Ball, and then say, okay, it's appeared over my head. Here's the Vengeful Crab Ball.
Put it in the corner over us so it's visible.
Vengeful Crab Ball. Now we're going to add the Life Spark Bandit. So that's going to be Bandit. And here's the Life Spark Bandit. Oh, it's facing the other direction too. Now, oh my god. It's like eating me.
You're gonna...
I'm getting banditized by the Life Spark Bandit. It's over my head. I'm burning. It's trying to give me positive energy, but it's on fire. Okay, so this is the Life Spark Bandit and the Vengeful Crab Ball. So you can now see them over our heads.
Electrum Juggernaut.
So what was the Electrum Juggernaut? Let's get an Electrum Juggernaut to join these two. So this is the Electrum Juggernaut. That looks cool. Belinda said "ooh" instead of laughing at it, so it's probably cooler than it is cute. So let's see what happens if we add an Electrum Juggernaut to the mix of this. I'm going to add it, grab the file, and go. Here it comes. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's in between us now.
Do we really need our faces in this? We're just getting covered by monsters.
We're getting covered by monsters. We'll see if anything is left by the end. Coda said the Vanda is going to eat the Vengeful Crab Ball. Hey, it's weak against bites and jaws.
That's true.
So this is the Electrum Juggernaut, the Vengeful Crab Ball, and the which kind of bandit? Life Spark Bandit.
Yes.
That are all like kind of attacking us over here. It looks like the creator of the Electrum Juggernaut likes this art of the Electrum Juggernaut as cool, well. Right? Yeah, it's really neat looking. All right. So
this is the kind of art you can expect in this book.
Yes, it will. I promise you that these monsters will not come out and like cover you up and like actually attack you in real life, like it may appear that they're doing here on the screen.
I tried to rush through them, but there's so many cool things. And Mark's like, "Okay, moving on," because I would have been here for 5 hours.
Well, because our goal was 2 hours, and we made it in our goal. Our goal was to do the slightly less than a minute per creature.
I know, but it's difficult because I
know,
kept wanting
too
to
much
say
cool
more
stuff.
cool stuff. Their monsters are all awesome. There are many things I didn't say about why you would want to put them in your games.
Yes.
Electrum Juggernaut's trying to keep the peace. Well, Electrum
Juggernaut's like,
than the two of them.
hey guys, break it up.
Electrum Juggernaut will succeed in keeping the peace.
Yeah, I think Electrum Juggernaut is...
Also, yeah, they definitely look like they might be attacking each other.
Yes, they are. And then the Juggernaut's
like
hold
Crab
on,
Bowl.
hold on, Crab Bowl. I see your pincer open here. Elftro says that they want a refund because they're not going to be literally attacked by by the creatures. Are there other art pieces that I can show? Well, I mean, I can show almost any of them, but the thing is, each one takes about that amount of time.
Here.
What? Oh, Laylaps, and I see. So yeah, I can grab a Laylaps. I can grab a few. Ooh. Here is a Laylaps. It is Laylaps. And so I will add the Laylaps. It's going to have to be chasing something.
Yes.
Because it's a Laylaps. So Laylaps is here. Oh my goodness. It's over me. It's over my face, this Laylaps. So yeah, we can do Laylaps. And everyone, if you've been watching this and you have no idea what these creatures are from, then remember, you can go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com to check out this bestiary. All these creatures are in there. Literally, these are the creatures that are in this Kickstarter. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And you can also join the channel if you want to now. It's like a kind of a new thing. And I'll also grab a Gloom Rat while we're at it, because we have the Gloom Rat here. Gloom Rat. There's the Gloom Rat.
That's cool.
Gloom Rat.
I like how the artist did that.
So I will put that over Linda because she thinks it's so cool, and she's like the only spot left on the screen for any existence. Well, it starts over me.
Gloom
Gloom. There's the gloom rat. It's showing up over Linda. Now she's hiding herself behind the gloom. and tiny little Layla's very ambitious hunter, the bandit's twice her size. There we go.
This is not necessarily representative of the actual size that these will be in the book. It's just
yes, actual size not shown here. They want their or Kisk as well. That I guess they won all 3 of theirs. I'm not sure if it's on here.
Is that one in yet?
It might be one of the ones that's not in. Either that or as is also a decent possibility that that Steven spelled it a different way, especially when it's difficult to spell. So I don't see it.
It's not showing up in the search.
It's either not there or it's spelled differently.
But not all of the art are in.
Not all the art are in, but most of them are in. So
we could check proximally in the C's and see if there's anything.
I don't see it. So it's probably one that's not in yet. There you go. And Alftro says less cartoony than the quick art for the description. Yeah, so they're going to be moved over to the art style for Battlezoo Bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're covered by critters.
Indeed.
Okay, well, everyone, thanks for joining us to take a look at these Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storms creatures. On Tuesday, we're going to... I don't even remember what our episode is for Tuesday. We're going to have whatever it says on the channel for Tuesday. And then, is Tuesday's episode is Build a Relic Workshop, I think.
Oh, yeah. Then
I think it's Build a Relic Workshop.
Then what was Saturday if that was Build a Relic? It was whatever one the other
Whatever was supposed to be here, which I think was not Build a Relic.
Yeah.
So we can check it out. And you can see it on the YouTube, like there's like a post or something like that.
I didn't update that last time, so.
Yes. So we'll take a look. Let me see what it says. It says here that Tuesday, it does not actually have...
Saturday, Nation Building for
GMs and PCs next Saturday. And Tuesday is going to be Relic Workshop. Mm-hmm. So it's Nation Building and Relics, but not in that order.
Indeed. Relics then Nation Building. Thank you so much for joining us.
And right before you go, take some XP.
Yes.
Glad you stayed because you didn't
2 hours worth of XP. Yes.
I think I did one for a smaller amount before. Mm-hmm. But there you have it. Okay.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Have a great week.